Narrator. February 14, 2016. Jacksonville, Florida. At exactly 3:12 a.m., a 911 call came in from a quiet suburban neighborhood. The caller didn't scream, he didn't cry, he whispered, and what he whispered would later haunt an entire city. "I think something is wrong next door." Police arrived within 7 minutes. The front door of the house was slightly open. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No alarms triggered. Inside, the lights were on. But the house was silent. Too silent. Scene investigation officers entered cautiously. The living room looked untouched. The television was still on, playing static. The kitchen sink was running. Upstairs was where everything changed. In the master bedroom, they found 34-year-old Rebecca Lawson. She was lying on the floor. No weapon nearby. No sign of struggle. The clock on the wall had stopped at 3:12 a.m. And written on the wall above her bed were 3 words: "He is watching." There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no security footage, except for one detail investigators couldn't explain. The neighbor's camera across the street had captured something. At 2:58 a.m., a man standing perfectly still on Rebecca's front lawn. For 6 full minutes, not moving, not pacing, just staring at the house. At 3:04 a.m., he vanished from frame. Not walking away, not running, just gone. Suspect identified 3 days later, police arrested Daniel Cross. Age 29, no prior violent record, quiet, reserved, worked night shifts as a warehouse clerk. He lived exactly 2 blocks away. What made police suspicious? Rebecca had filed a complaint 6 months earlier. She claimed someone had been watching her house at night. She described a man standing under the streetlight. Police never found evidence, but Daniel Cross admitted something strange during questioning. He said, "I was there, but I didn't go inside." Musical note. Interrogation room sound. Subtle echo. Detective Harris leaned forward. "Then how did the message get on her wall?" Daniel stared at the table. No blinking, no shaking, just stillness. After 47 seconds of silence, he spoke. "I don't remember." That would become his pattern. He answered basic questions, but whenever asked about the crime, he went silent. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Psychological evaluation. Court-appointed psychologists examined him. Diagnosis: no psychosis, no schizophrenia, no violent disorder. But one doctor wrote in his report, "Subject displays abnormal emotional detachment and an unusual fixation on observation behavior." Observation behavior. Daniel admitted he sometimes stood outside Rebecca's house at night. Not to harm her, just to watch. He said watching made him feel connected. But he insisted, "I didn't hurt her." The trial. The prosecution had only circumstantial evidence. He was at the scene. He had been watching her for months. His fingerprints were found on her backyard fence. But nothing placed him inside the bedroom. Still, the jury deliberated for 9 hours. Verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Sentence: life imprisonment, without parole. Musical note. Prison door slams. Florida State Prison. Cell Block D. Cell number 13. Daniel Cross never appealed. He never protested. He never cried. But what happened next inside that prison would make guards question everything they believed. Within the first month, 2 inmates requested transfers from Cell Block D. Reason: they said Cell 13 feels wrong. One guard reported hearing whispers at night. Another claimed the temperature near Daniel's cell dropped suddenly. CCTV showed nothing unusual. Daniel followed prison rules perfectly. He never fought, never argued, never spoke unless spoken to. But every night at 3:12 a.m., he stood facing the wall. Completely still, for exactly 6 minutes, just like the night of the murder. Clapperboard Episode 1 ending. Hook. On the 47th night of his imprisonment, a guard walking past Cell 13 stopped suddenly. Because written faintly on the inside wall, scratched into concrete, were the same 3 words found in Rebecca's bedroom: "He is watching." The problem: Daniel had been under constant surveillance. He never left his bunk. He never touched the wall. So who wrote it? And more importantly, who was watching? Musical note. Music slowly fades. Musical note. Low atmospheric drone. Distant prison ambience. Narrator. Calm, controlled, American tone. March 3, 2017. Florida State Prison. At exactly 3:12 a.m., Officer Raymond Cole was making his routine walk through Cell Block D. He had worked night shifts for 11 years. He didn't believe in ghost stories. He didn't scare easily. But that night, something changed. As he approached Cell 13, he noticed Daniel Cross standing again. Facing the wall. Completely still, exactly like every other night. Cole checked his watch. 3:12 a.m. He waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. Then something unusual happened. Daniel's lips began moving, but no sound came out. The first recording the next morning, Officer Cole filed a report. The prison administration reviewed the surveillance footage from that night. The video showed Daniel standing, motionless, but when the audio was enhanced, there was something very faint, a whisper, not from Daniel, but from somewhere inside the cell. 3 words, "He sees you." The audio technician replayed it 15 times. The whisper did not match Daniel's voice pattern. Different pitch, different cadence. Administration dismissed it as interference. Old wiring, faulty microphone, case closed. But Officer Cole wasn't convinced. The second incident 3 nights later. 3:12 a.m. This time, 2 inmates from Cell 9 started screaming. Guards rushed in. Both men were shaking, claiming someone had been standing outside their bars, watching them, but the hallway camera showed no one. Except Daniel, still facing his wall, still unmoving, still silent. One inmate kept repeating, "It wasn't him, it was behind him." Behind him, but Daniel's cell faced solid concrete. There was nothing behind that wall. Just foundation, and earth. The investigation inside the prison. The warden authorized a quiet internal review. Maintenance inspected Cell 13, no hidden speakers, no loose panels, no structural damage, but one detail stood out. The temperature inside Cell 13 dropped exactly 4 degrees every night at 3:12 a.m. Not the entire block, just that cell. Engineers blamed ventilation patterns. Coincidence. But coincidences were stacking up. Daniel's behavior changes. After 2 months of silence, Daniel finally requested something. A pen and paper. He began writing at night. Not letters, not appeals, just pages filled with the same sentence, "I didn't open the door." Over and over, hundreds of times. Psychologists revisited him. Dr. Emily Carter conducted a one-on-one session. She asked softly, "Daniel, who opened the door?" For the first time since his arrest, Daniel smiled. A slow, unsettling smile. And said, "You think it was me?" That was the longest sentence he had spoken in over a year. Rebecca's autopsy revisited. Meanwhile, outside prison walls, something unexpected happened. A forensic intern reviewing old evidence noticed something strange in Rebecca Lawson's autopsy report. There were no defensive wounds. No bruising on her wrists. No signs she fought back. Toxicology showed mild sedatives in her bloodstream. Prescribed. But dosage levels were slightly elevated. Not enough to kill, but enough to disorient. Someone would have had to be close to her. Trusted. Comfortable. Daniel had no record of entering her home before. No fingerprints inside. No hair fibers. Nothing. So how did the message get on the wall? And why was there zero forced entry? The neighbor speaks again. The man who made the original 911 call agreed to a new interview. His name was Thomas Reed. He lived next door to Rebecca. He claimed he heard nothing unusual that night. But when shown the lawn footage again, the 6 minutes of Daniel standing motionless, Thomas hesitated. He leaned closer to the screen. "Zoom in," he said. The video technician zoomed. In the reflection of Rebecca's living room window, there was movement. A shadow. Inside the house. While Daniel was still outside. The timestamp read 3:01 a.m. 11 minutes before police arrived. If Daniel was outside, who was inside? Back to Cell the 13th of March 17, 2017. 3:12 a.m. Officer Cole stood directly outside Daniel's cell. Watching him, determined to prove nothing unusual was happening. Daniel faced the wall, still, silent. 5 minutes passed. Then the lights flickered. Just once. Cole turned to check the electrical panel down the hall. When he turned back, Daniel was no longer facing the wall. He was facing Cole, eyes wide open, without blinking, and carved faintly into the concrete behind him, a new sentence. He opened it. Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear, because the carving looked fresh. But Daniel's hands were empty. And the camera showed he never moved. Episode 2 ending. Hook. The next morning, a search team dug behind the foundation of Cell 13. Just to eliminate every possibility. 3 feet below ground, they discovered something disturbing. A small, rusted door. Sealed shut. Blueprints of the prison showed nothing there. No tunnel, no access point, no record. But the metal handle was cold. As if someone had touched it recently. And etched into the surface, 3 letters, RL. Rebecca Lawson. Musical note. Music rises slowly, then cuts to silence. Musical note low industrial rumble. Distant metallic echo. Narrator steady, controlled tone March 18, 2017. Florida State Prison. At 9:40 a.m., maintenance crews stood frozen around a discovery no one could explain. 3 feet beneath cell 13, a rusted metal hatch. There were no records of it. No construction blueprints showing a lower chamber. No renovation logs. Yet there it was, sealed from the outside, as if someone had wanted it forgotten. The hatch is opened. Warden Mitchell authorized a controlled opening. 2 guards, 1 maintenance supervisor, 1 camera operator. The seal was old, decades old. When the hatch was pried open, a rush of cold air escaped upward. Not damp, not dusty, cold, unnaturally cold. A narrow concrete shaft led downward. About 8 feet. At the bottom, a small underground room. Bare concrete, no furniture, no wiring, but on the far wall, scratched into the surface repeatedly, 312, over and over. Hundreds of times. Different handwriting, different pressure marks, as if written by multiple people. Historical records. The prison was built in 1958. Old records showed that during early construction, 1 section of foundation had collapsed. 3 workers died. Their names: Robert Lang, Isaac Turner, Michael Hayes. Initials: R.L. Robert Lang, not Rebecca Lawson, but the coincidence unsettled investigators. Because Robert Lang's death certificate listed time of death as 3:12 a.m. Daniel's reaction. When Daniel Cross was informed that construction crews were digging beneath his cell, he finally reacted. He laughed, not loudly, not maniacally, just a quiet, breathy laugh. Dr. Emily Carter asked him, "Did you know about the room?" Daniel shook his head. "I only hear it." Hear what? The knocking. That night, prison audio systems were set to record continuously. At 3:12 a.m., 3 distinct knocks were captured. From beneath cell 13. But the underground chamber was empty. Completely empty. Rebecca's hidden connection. Meanwhile, outside the prison, Detective Harris reopened Rebecca Lawson's background file. A new detail surfaced. Rebecca had written a graduate thesis in college. Her topic: Urban Legends and Structural Memory, How Buildings Retain Psychological Imprints. 1 chapter focused specifically on Florida State Prison. She had interviewed retired guards, studied unexplained incidents, documented rumors of the hollow cell, a cell where inmates claimed to hear voices from below. That cell number, a shocking timeline. Rebecca completed her thesis in 2012. Daniel Cross began working night shifts in 2013. Rebecca's first complaint about someone watching her house, filed in 2015. But investigators discovered something disturbing. Phone records showed Rebecca and Daniel's numbers had connected once. 4 years earlier. A 2-minute call. Neither had mentioned knowing the other. Why would Rebecca, a researcher studying prison legends, call a warehouse clerk like Daniel Cross? Unless he wasn't just a warehouse clerk. Daniel's past. A deeper background check revealed sealed juvenile records. At age 14, Daniel had been placed in state custody for trespassing. Location: an abandoned section of Florida State Prison during a renovation period. According to archived notes, he claimed he was following the sound. The report described him as calm, not frightened. When asked what sound he was following, he answered, someone was trapped. But no one was missing. No workers reported lost. No evidence of intrusion. The case was dismissed as adolescent curiosity. But now, it felt different. Back to the underground room. March 21, 2017. 3:12 a.m. This time, cameras were placed inside the lower chamber. High definition, thermal imaging. Upstairs, Daniel stood facing the wall. Downstairs, the room appeared empty. At exactly 3:27 a.m., thermal cameras detected a brief cold mass, shaped like a human outline, lasting 2 seconds, then gone. Upstairs, Daniel whispered. He found the door. The neighbor's secret. Detective Harris re-interviewed Thomas Reed, the neighbor who called 911. Under pressure, Thomas admitted something. Rebecca had asked him about Daniel months before her death. She believed Daniel wasn't watching her. She believed he was waiting for something inside her house. She once told Thomas, if he's outside, it means it's already inside. Thomas thought she was paranoid. But he admitted something else. On the night of her death, at 3:05 a.m., he saw Daniel on the lawn. And behind Rebecca's bedroom curtain, he saw movement. Not Rebecca, someone taller, standing completely still. Psychological fracture drive. Carter reviewed all recordings. She returned to Daniel with one final question. Daniel, who opened the door? This time, he answered immediately. I didn't open it. Then who did? He leaned closer. Voice barely audible. You did. Episode 3 ending hook that same night. For the first time, Daniel did not stand at 3:12 a.m. Instead, the underground camera activated on its own. Without being triggered, and in the center of the empty chamber, a new message appeared on the wall. Fresh, wet, as if carved seconds ago. The door is not below. Upstairs, Daniel slowly turned toward the ceiling. Musical note music swells, then cuts abruptly. Musical note low heartbeat like bass. Soft static noise underneath. Narrator calm, tense tone March 22, 2017. The message found in the underground chamber changed everything. The door is not below. Investigators stared at the footage over and over. No one entered the chamber. No tools were found. No physical explanation existed, yet the carving was real. Fresh concrete dust still on the floor. If the door wasn't below, then where was it? Rebecca's hidden recordings. Detective Harris returned to Rebecca Lawson's home. The house had been sealed after her death. But during a second forensic sweep, something was discovered. Inside her attic, a small locked case. Inside the case, a digital voice recorder. Labeled Project Hollow. The files were dated weeks before her murder. Musical note click, tape hiss. Rebecca's voice recording February 2nd. I'm starting to believe the stories are not metaphors. Buildings don't remember, people do. But something is repeating itself. Another file. February 9th. He's been outside again, but he doesn't look at me. He looks at the house. And then, the final recording. Dated February 14th. The night she died, 2:57 a.m. He's here again, but tonight feels different. There's a pause. Heavy breathing. Then she whispers, "Oh my God, it's already inside." The recording cuts off at 3:11 a.m. 1 minute before police were called. The hidden space in her house. Investigators tore apart the bedroom walls. Nothing unusual, but beneath the floorboards, under the master bedroom, they found a crawlspace. Small, narrow, not part of the original blueprints. Inside that crawlspace, the same marking, 312 carved repeatedly into the wooden beams. And something else. Fingerprints. Not Daniel's. Not Rebecca's. Unknown. A new theory drive. Carter proposed something controversial. What if Daniel isn't the cause? What if he's reacting? She suggested Daniel may have experienced something as a child in the prison foundation collapse zone. A trauma. An event at 3:12 a.m. And years later, Rebecca, researching the same prison legend, may have unknowingly reopened something. If Daniel was standing outside Rebecca's house, perhaps he wasn't stalking her. Perhaps he was monitoring something. Waiting for it to manifest. The pattern. Investigators reviewed unsolved deaths within a 50-mile radius over the past 40 years. 4 cases. All different circumstances. No direct connection. Except, time of death. 3:12 a.m. And in 2 of those cases, witnesses reported seeing someone standing outside the house shortly before. A man, still, watching. Descriptions similar to Daniel, but one report was from 1989. Daniel would have been 2 years old. Prison escalation. Back in cell block D, things worsened. Multiple inmates requested emergency relocation, claiming they heard scratching beneath the floor. One guard resigned after reporting he saw someone standing in the underground chamber, while Daniel was locked in his cell. Cameras showed nothing, but the guard passed a lie detector. The break-in. Daniel. For the first time, Daniel asked for Dr. Carter specifically. When she entered the interview room, he looked exhausted. Not scared, not angry, exhausted. "They think it's me," he said quietly. "Is it?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "I only stand there because if I don't, it moves." Dr. Carter felt a chill. "What moves?" He stared directly at her. The door. The twist. Forensic teams re-examined Rebecca's final autopsy imaging. Enhanced scans revealed something subtle. A faint bruise pattern on the back of her neck. Not from strangulation, not from blunt force, but from pressure, as if someone had held her in place. From behind, while standing very still. No DNA, no fibers, nothing physical, just pressure. The same kind of pressure Daniel once described feeling, at age 14, when he said someone was behind him. The underground revelation. March 28, 2017. At 3:12 a.m., all cameras in cell block D cut out. For exactly 6 minutes, backup systems failed, generators flickered. When footage returned, Daniel was no longer facing the wall. He was sitting calmly on his bunk. But beneath him, the concrete floor had cracked. A thin vertical line, like the outline of a doorway. From floor to ceiling, Guards rushed in. The crack wasn't deep, just surface level, but perfectly shaped, like a door frame. Daniel looked at them and whispered, "It's not below." He slowly pointed upward. Episode 4 ending. Hook investigators check the ceiling of cell 13. Above it, an empty maintenance corridor. Unused for decades. Dust-covered. Silent. Except, in the center of the corridor floor, directly above Daniel's cell, was a perfectly clean rectangle. As if something heavy had been standing there. Recently. Very recently. Musical note. Low rising tension tone, and at 3:12 a.m., a new knock was recorded. This time, from above. Knock, knock, knock. Musical note cut to silence. Musical note. Low metallic hum. Slow rising tension. Narrator calm, serious tone. March 29, 2017. Florida State Prison. After discovering the clean rectangular mark in the abandoned maintenance corridor above cell 13, the warden ordered immediate inspection. Dust covered every inch of the corridor. Except one area, a perfect 6-foot outline. As if something had been standing there. Watching. The corridor search. Investigators installed motion cameras overnight. Thermal imaging. Sound sensors. Every inch covered. At 3:11 a.m., nothing. At 3:12 a.m., all sensors spiked simultaneously. Temperature dropped 5 degrees. Audio picked up a dragging sound. Like fabric brushing concrete. Cameras captured something subtle. A distortion. Not a figure. Not a shadow. But the air itself bending slightly. And then, 3 knocks. From directly above cell 13. Daniel's breakdown. For the first time in prison, Daniel panicked. At 3:12 a.m., instead of standing calmly, he backed into the corner of his cell. Covering his ears. Repeating, "Not tonight, not tonight." Guards rushed in. He screamed one sentence. It found the other door. Rebecca's final video. Detective Harris made a breakthrough. Rebecca's laptop, previously believed corrupted, was partially restored. One final video file recovered. Timestamp, 2:59 a.m. February 14th. The video showed Rebecca in her bedroom. Nervous. Camera facing her. She whispered, "If anything happens to me, it's not him." She turned the camera slowly toward her bedroom door. The door was closed, but the handle moved, very slightly, without opening. Rebecca froze. Behind her, in the mirror reflection, a tall dark shape stood near the wall. Completely still. The video glitched. At 3:12 a.m., the screen went black. The childhood event revealed old state records were reopened. At age 14, Daniel had entered the abandoned prison foundation. But there was something sealed in juvenile archives. A maintenance worker had gone missing that same night. Last seen near the collapsed foundation area. Time last recorded alive, 3:12 a.m. Daniel claimed he heard someone calling for help. But search teams found nothing. Except scratch marks on concrete. From inside the wall, the pattern becomes clear. Drive. Carter formed a chilling theory. What if Daniel wasn't connected to Rebecca randomly? What if both locations, the prison, Rebecca's house, shared something structural? Blueprint comparison revealed something shocking. Rebecca's house had been built by the same construction company that renovated Florida State Prison in the 1980s. Using reclaimed materials, including foundation concrete, from the prison, meaning, part of cell block D, was inside Rebecca's bedroom floor. The door explained. Daniel finally spoke clearly during interrogation. "You don't understand. It's not a door like yours, Doctor," Carter asked. "Then what is it?" "It's when the walls get thin." "When does that happen?" He looked directly at the clock in the room. 3:11 a.m. At 3:12, lights flickered. In the prison, in the interrogation room, in the maintenance corridor, simultaneously. The first physical evidence. When guards rushed to cell 13, the crack in the floor had widened. Not deep, but wider, like something pressing from the other side. In the maintenance corridor above, a long scrape mark appeared overnight. As if something heavy had shifted position. Measured length, 6 feet, 2 inches. Exactly Rebecca's height. The realization Rebecca wasn't killed by forced entry. She wasn't attacked in struggle. She was held in place. By something standing behind her. Exactly like Daniel described at 14. Exactly like the thermal shape seen underground. Exactly like the distortion above cell 13. Daniel had been standing outside her house that night, because he knew what time it was. 3:12 was coming. And when 3:12 comes, the walls get thin. Episode 5 ending. Hook March 31, 2017. 3:12 a.m. Every camera in the prison recorded something undeniable. In the maintenance corridor, a full human-shaped shadow moved across the floor. But no body cast it. Downstairs, Daniel stood still again. facing the wall, whispering softly, "It's choosing." The next morning, another inmate in cell block D was found dead. No injuries, no sign of struggle, time of death, 3:12 a.m., and carved into his cell wall, fresh, deep, unmistakable, the door is open. Musical note music rises slowly, then fades into silence. Musical note low suspenseful hum. Echoing metallic clicks. Narrator steady, deep tone April 1, 2017. Florida State Prison. After the second mysterious death at 3:12 a.m., the warden ordered cell block D to be put on lockdown. Every inmate accounted for. Cameras rechecked. Guards stationed every corner. Nothing stopped what was coming. Multiple death pattern drive. Carter reviewed records. 1989. Worker at Foundation collapse. 3:12 a.m. 2012. Prison accident. 3:12 a.m. 2015. Rebecca Lawson's death. 3:12 a.m. 2017. New inmate. 3:12 a.m. All connected by time. All connected by thin walls. Prison lockdown night April 1, 3:11 a.m. Daniel crosses in cell 13. Stands facing the wall. Guards watch nervously. 3:12 a.m. strikes. Lights flicker. Temperature drops 6 degrees. CCTV shows a dark figure moving without a body. Thermal cameras detect multiple human-shaped forms in the hallway. The guards hear whispers. Not Daniel's. From everywhere at once. It's coming. It's choosing. Daniel's reaction. Daniel collapses to the floor. Sweating. Shaking. Repeating. It opens. It opens. It chooses. Doctor. Carter kneels beside him. What opens, Daniel? Tell me. He whispers clearly for the first time. The door, the thin door, between here and there. The final connection. Investigation teams cross-reference Rebecca's home and the prison. They discover. Same construction company, same batch of concrete, same structural anomalies. Walls weren't just walls. Floors weren't just floors. At exactly 3:12 a.m., thin layers of reality allowed passage. Something could move between locations. Between her house and cell 13. Episode 6 ending hook April 2, 3:12 a.m. CCTV captures a new image. In the maintenance corridor above cell 13, a dark shadow bends unnaturally. It pauses. It looks directly at Daniel. Daniel stands, frozen, then whispers, "It's finished, for now." The next morning, the guards find the floor of cell 13 scratched again. The door will return. Musical note music rises, suspense hits climax, then silence. Musical note low, ominous drone. Distant metallic echoes. Occasional faint whispers. Narrator calm, deep tone April 3, 2017. Florida State Prison. Cell block D is silent, but not empty. Guards report an eerie sensation. Footsteps echoing in hallways, but cameras show nothing. Temperature drops to freezing near cell 13. Inmates whisper among themselves. It's moving again. It's choosing. Guards terrifying reports at 3:10 a.m., the night shift captain notices something odd. Thermal cameras detect shapes moving inside the walls. CCTV shows doors slightly ajar, then closing on their own. 1. Guard reports hearing someone whisper his full name in a voice not belonging to any inmate. By 3:12 a.m., panic spreads, lights flicker continuously. Emergency alarms fail. A deafening low hum resonates from cell 13. Daniel's deep revelation drive. Carter enters cell 13 before 3:12 a.m. Daniel is sitting on the bunk, silent. She asks, "Daniel, why is this happening?" Daniel's eyes widen. A single word escapes his lips, "Threshold." "Doctor." Carter leans closer. "What threshold?" Daniel whispers. "The thin door, the space between. The dead can't pass, but the living can't stop it." Prison-wide chaos. 3:12 a.m. strikes. Multiple inmates scream simultaneously. Some collapse. Guards see faint human-shaped shadows crawling along walls and ceilings, disappearing when they look directly. Thermal sensors detect unknown forms with irregular heat signatures. The emergency generator fails. The prison is plunged into near darkness. Daniel stands calmly, facing the wall, whispering, "It chooses. It always chooses." Rebecca's unfinished work. Detective Harris re-examines Rebecca's last thesis. She had documented cases of unusual structural echoes in buildings. The idea of thin layers of reality, where sounds, movements, and even presences could cross between locations. She called it Project Hollow. Her last note, written the day before her death: "If someone witnesses the door, they will know, but no one will believe it until 3:12 comes." Episode 7 ending hook. By 3:15 a.m., lights return. Cell block D appears normal. Cameras show no shadow. Inmates are shaken but alive. Except one thing. Cell 13's floor has fresh scratches forming a single word, waiting. Daniel Cross sits on the bunk. Silent, eyes staring at the ceiling. Musical note music slowly builds tension, fades to ominous silence. April 4, 2017. Florida State Prison. Cell Block D is on edge. Every inmate is restless. Every guard is alert. At 3:12 a.m., the familiar chill fills the corridor. Thermal sensors detect movement where none should exist. Shadows appear and vanish across walls and ceilings. Daniel Cross stands calmly in cell 13. But his eyes, wide open, fixed on the ceiling. The hidden message earlier that day, drive. Carter examined the scratched words in cell 13. Waiting, the door is open. She connects these with Rebecca's final thesis notes. The door is not physical. It's a thin layer between locations, a threshold where reality bends. At 3:12 a.m., the thin door becomes active. The supernatural evidence at exactly 3:12 a.m., shadows begin moving independently. Whispering voices echo, repeating names of inmates. Floorboards in multiple cells vibrate as if something heavy passed beneath. Thermal cameras detect human shapes moving through walls, impossible according to physics. One guard screams, reporting, "I saw someone crawl along the ceiling, then vanish into thin air." Daniel whispers, "They are here, watching, waiting." Rebecca's house connection detective Harris cross-references Rebecca's house and finds, same batch of concrete used in the prison, same layout pattern in the bedroom floorboards, meaning, the thin door can exist wherever these structural layers match. Daniel had unknowingly been tracking the threshold events, trying to stay ahead. Daniel speaks for the first time. He raises his voice. They are not human, they are echoes. Remnants trapped between walls. They choose when to cross. They want someone to see, and someone to stand at the threshold. Dr. Carter, horrified, asks, "Then, Rebecca?" Daniel. "She reached the threshold first. Then, it chose her." Episode 8 ending hook 3:15 a.m., lights flicker. Shadows vanish. Temperature returns to normal. The floor of cell 13 has new scratches. Next. Daniel sits, eyes staring, silent. Outside, in the abandoned maintenance corridor, faint. Knocking begins again. Musical note music rises slowly, then cuts to silence. Narrator calm, deep tone. April 5, 2017. Florida State Prison. Cell Block D has been on edge for days. 3:12 a.m. has become a time of fear, anticipation, and unexplainable phenomena. Every camera, every thermal sensor, every guard knows the moment is coming. Daniel Cross sits quietly on his bunk. He no longer faces the wall. His eyes are focused straight ahead. He knows. Rebecca's final clues. Detective Harris revisits Rebecca's recordings. There's a final, hidden file. Her voice, shaky but determined. "If anyone finds this, understand, the threshold is not a door you open with your hands. It exists wherever thin layers of memory, structure, and human presence overlap." At 3:12 a.m., the echoes cross. They choose the observer, they choose the witness. Beware the threshold. The threshold revealed drive. Carter explains to the warden. The thin door isn't physical. It's a structural anomaly, a moment when reality and memory converge. At exactly 3:12 a.m., echoes from past events manifest as temporary forms. They interact with the living. Sometimes violently. Daniel whispers, "They are not ghosts, not dead, not alive, they are the echoes, and they always choose." Prison-wide phenomena. At 3:12 a.m., shadows move independently along hallways. A faint knocking is heard above cell 13. Temperatures drop drastically. Inmates scream without any physical cause. One guard reports, "I saw shapes, tall, distorted, moving through walls. They looked right at me, then vanished." Daniel repeats quietly, "They are not done, not yet." Daniel's innocence. Detective Harris reviews all evidence. Daniel had no physical contact with Rebecca. All forensic evidence points to the threshold phenomena. Daniel's presence at her house. Purely coincidental, or instinctual. Dr. Carter confirms. He has been observing, trying to understand. He isn't the killer. He's the witness, the chosen observer. Episode 9 ending hook at 3:15 a.m., everything stops. The lights stabilize. Thermal readings disappear. The shadows vanish. Cell 13 floor shows one final message. The observer remains. Daniel sits, silent, watching. And somewhere above, in the abandoned corridor, faint, deliberate knocks begin again. Musical note music swells, then cuts abruptly to silence. April 6, 2017. Florida State Prison. Cell Block D has become a focal point of fear. Every inmate, guard, and investigator knows 3:12 a.m. is no longer just a time, it's a moment of inevitability. Daniel Cross sits on his bunk. Silent, eyes wide, waiting. The threshold activates at exactly 3:12 a.m., temperatures drop 10 degrees in cell block D. Multiple shadows move through walls without obstruction. Whispering voices echo, repeating names of past victims. Floorboards, walls, ceilings vibrate slightly as if the building itself is breathing. Daniel whispers. They are aware, they know I see. Rebecca's final recording. Detective Harris plays the recovered tape from Rebecca. I understand it now, the threshold is not just in one place. It moves with the mind, the memory, it chooses its observers, it demands witnesses, and it does not forgive curiosity. The tape ends with a scream, unidentifiable, chilling. Daniel confronts the threshold drive. Carter approaches Daniel. Daniel, what happens if it chooses you? Daniel slowly stands, his voice barely audible. I have always been chosen, I only survive by standing at the edge, watching, waiting, acknowledging it exists. He steps closer to the center of his cell, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Prison-wide chaos at 3:27 a.m., lights flicker violently. Guards scream at unseen movement. One inmate collapses, eyes wide, silent. Thermal cameras detect 3 humanoid shapes moving through walls, converging on cell 13. A sudden, metallic clang echoes. Dust falls from the ceiling. The temperature drops another 5 degrees. Daniel whispers. It chooses, and now, it tests. The first door crossing above cell 13, in the abandoned maintenance corridor, the same faint outline begins to glow faintly. The shadow shapes converge on the rectangle above. A soft hum grows louder. Daniel looks at Drive, Carter and says, it's here, Rebecca is here. Meanwhile, the scratch marks on the floor shift subtly, forming new words, witness or join. Episode 10 ending hook at 3:13 a.m., everything stops. Shadows vanish, temperature normalizes. Inmates look around, dazed but alive. Daniel sits again, silent, watching. Above him, the rectangle in the maintenance corridor remains faintly outlined. Knocking begins slowly, deliberately, as if reminding the prison, the threshold is not gone. It is waiting. Musical note music rises slowly, then cuts abruptly to chilling silence. Narrator tense, calm tone. April 7, 2017. Florida State Prison. The warden has declared cell block D off limits. Yet investigators, Drive, Carter, and a small surveillance team remain. 3:12 a.m. is approaching. Daniel Cross sits silently on his bunk, eyes fixed upward. No one dares speak. The threshold fully activates at exactly 3:12 a.m. Shadows appear along walls, ceilings, floors, moving independently. Whispers repeat all previous victims' names. Floorboards and walls vibrate as if the prison itself is alive. Thermal cameras detect multiple human-shaped heat signatures, converging on cell 13. Daniel whispers. They are aware, they see me, they choose now. Rebecca appears in a flash of flickering light, the faint outline of a figure appears above the cell. A woman's silhouette, unmistakably Rebecca Lawson. Her presence feels weightless but oppressive. A soft, distant whisper. Witness, observe, survive. Daniel's eyes widen. He mutters. I've waited, now it's my turn, but I survive because I acknowledge it. The choice. The floor of cell 13 scratches itself. New words appear. Observer or join. Doctor. Carter asks Daniel. What does it mean? Daniel calmly replies. You must see it, acknowledge it, or you vanish into the threshold. Above, in the maintenance corridor, shadows swirl. The rectangle glows faintly, whispers grow louder. Choose, or remain, forever. Witnessing the threshold, Daniel stands, still facing the cell wall. He closes his eyes. The shadows begin to press toward him. Whispers surround him. The air itself seems to bend. Then, slowly, Daniel opens his eyes. He is unharmed. The shadows dissipate. Temperature normalizes. The scratch marks on the floor now red. The observer remains, for now. Doctor. Carter whispers. It spared him. Daniel nods slightly. Then, quietly, because I saw, I understood, I did not interfere, I acknowledged. Episode 11 ending hook April 8, 2017. Cell 13 remains empty except for Daniel. Shadows no longer roam the hallways, for now. Above, the maintenance corridor shows faint traces of movement, as if the threshold waits silently. Daniel sits, silent, eyes staring at the ceiling, whispering softly. It chooses, it always chooses, but not today. Musical note music slowly fades into ominous silence. Narrator, slow, intense tone, April 9, 2017. Florida State Prison. The threshold mystery has reached its peak. Daniel Cross sits in cell 13, silent, waiting. Outside, Drive, Carter and Detective Harris review all recovered evidence. Every shadow, every scratch mark, every whisper now makes sense, partially. The threshold's origin investigators discover. During prison renovations in the 1980s, part of Cell Block D's foundation used reclaimed concrete from multiple older structures. One structure had multiple deaths under mysterious circumstances. Researchers note that energy from traumatic deaths can imprint on structures, a rare phenomenon known as psychic echo, in Rebecca's thesis. The thin door is a psychic threshold, a layer of reality where echoes of past trauma manifest physically, activated at precise times 3:12 a.m. when multiple structural and psychological factors align. Observers become aware, they witness echoes, sometimes survive, sometimes vanish. Rebecca plus Daniel connection. Rebecca studied the prison and structural echoes. Daniel, as a child, was unknowingly exposed to the threshold during the foundation collapse. His sensitivity to these echoes grew over time. He was at Rebecca's house during her death not as a killer, but as a witness. The threshold chose him to observe, survive, and document. Final threshold event, April 9, 3:12 a.m., shadows swirl in the corridors. Whispering voices of past victims echo louder than ever. The rectangle above cell 13 glows faintly. Daniel stands, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The scratches on the floor shift. Acknowledge, survive, observe, shadows press toward Daniel. Whispers repeat his name. He closes his eyes, breathes slowly, and whispers, "I see, I understand, I do not interfere." The shadows fade. Temperature normalizes. The threshold rests, for now. Chilling ending, the investigators leave. Daniel remains in cell 13, calm. Floor scratches remain. The observer remains. Maintenance corridor above shows faint movement again, subtle, deliberate. Whispers echo in empty hallways. It chooses, it always chooses. Daniel sits. Eyes staring at the ceiling. Silent, waiting. Musical note, music fades into haunting, unresolved silence. Time, March 1, 2017. Key points. Daniel Cross arrives at the prison. Strange anomalies noticed in cell 13. First hints of 3:12 a.m. phenomena. Suspenseful sounds, footsteps, whispers in empty corridors. Narration example. March 1, 2017. Daniel Cross steps into cell block D. The air feels heavier than usual, colder. Shadows stretch along the walls. Something waits. Episode 2, 3:12 a.m. Key points. Officer Cole notices Daniel standing motionless at 3:12 a.m. Surveillance shows faint whispers from nowhere. "He sees you." Inmates report seeing someone behind Daniel, though walls are solid. Cell 13 temperature drops 4 degrees at 3:12 a.m. Daniel begins writing. "I didn't open the door." Episode 3, The Door Beneath. Key points. Rusted hatch discovered beneath cell 13. Small underground room with 3:12, scratched hundreds of times. Historical deaths linked to 3:12 a.m., Robert Lang, etc. Daniel's childhood trespassing linked to threshold sensitivity. Rebecca's thesis on hollow cell, discovered. Episode 4, The Door is Not Below. Key points. Message in underground chamber, the door is not below. Rebecca's hidden recordings about thin layers of reality. Crawl space in Rebecca's house with 3:12, scratched. Daniel's behavior suggests he is observing, not attacking. Pattern of unexplained deaths at 3:12 a.m. emerges. Episode 5, Above the Ceiling. Key points. Maintenance corridor above cell 13 has a human-shaped outline. 3:12 a.m. triggers thermal anomalies and shadow shapes. Daniel whispers, "It found the other door." Rebecca's research shows psychic echoes in structures. Scratches in cell 13. The door is open. Episode 6, The Door Opens. Key points. Prison lockdown. Multiple deaths pattern examined. 3:12 a.m. causes hallways to fill with shadows and whispers. Daniel reacts in panic. It opens, it chooses, scratch marks, the door will return. Episode 7, Prison in Chaos. Key points. Full prison chaos at 3:12 a.m. Shadows and human-shaped thermal anomalies. Daniel whispers, "It chooses. It always chooses." Rebecca's thesis shows Project Hollow, and warnings about observers. Scratches appear, waiting. Episode 8, The Threshold Revealed. Key points. Rebecca's final recording. The threshold chooses its observers. Daniel identifies the thin door as a structural psychic phenomenon. Thermal and shadow anomalies intensify. Floor crack in cell 13 hints upward threshold. Scratches. Next, Episode 9, The Truth of the Threshold. Key points. Threshold is a psychic layer activated at 3:12 a.m. Observers are chosen to witness, survive, and document. Daniel is innocent, only observing. Rebecca's death explained as threshold manifestation, not physical attack. Scratch marks. The observer remains. Episode 10, Crossing the Threshold. Key points. Climax begins. Shadows converge on cell 13. Floorboards, walls, ceilings vibrate. Daniel acknowledges threshold, survives. Scratch marks. Observer OR join. Episode 11, The Final Witness. Key points. Prison-wide chaos at 3:12 a.m. Rebecca's ghostly outline appears above cell 13. Daniel survives by observing and acknowledging. Scratch marks. The observer remains, for now. Episode 12, The Threshold's Secret. Key points. Full reveal of threshold origin, psychic echoes from traumatic deaths. Daniel's connection to Rebecca and prison explained. Supernatural climax. 3:12 a.m. phenomena manifests fully, then recedes. Daniel survives as observer. Chilling ending. Threshold remains active, awaiting the next observer. Final scratch. The observer remains. Small diamond instructions for audio-video production. Each episode approximately 10 minutes 1300-1500 words. Use calm, suspenseful narration with occasional whispers, metallic sounds, ambient drones. Include pause for suspense after key phrases, e.g., it chooses, it always chooses. Background sound. Flickering lights, footsteps, wind, low hums, faint knocks. Maintain slow pacing, letting tension build gradually. Ensure the final episode leaves a chilling unresolved feeling, ideal for horror documentary style.